Hey, everybody, welcome back. It's time for the presentation on Chapter 5 in Sociology. I feel your excitement because, after all, here I am, giving it all up for you, my beloved students. Just a moment. Okay, well, today's chapter is socialization, and I want to start off with a quote let me see, give credit where credit is due here. This is novelist Rita Mae Brown said, "The reward for conformity is that everyone likes you except yourself." Okay, well, today's chapter on socialization, what I would like you to imagine, the key here is the debate that's been going on for quite some time as to what has the greatest influence on human behavior. Is it biology, nature, the biological sciences, or on the other end of the continuum meaning more or less, the other end of the continuum is nurture, society, the social sciences. And so we will investigate the information that's out there. Clarence Darrow. Okay, for famous people for $50. Who is Clarence Darrow? No one knows. Okay, how about he was a lawyer? Nobody knows. Okay, how about the book or the play or the movie, Inherit the Wind? Nothing. Okay, well, Inherit the Wind was about the so-called Scopes monkey trial that took place in Tennessee, I believe in the 1920s. And Clarence Darrow was a big city lawyer, I think from Chicago, who came down to defend this school teacher who had the audacity to teach Darwin's evolution in his biology class, as opposed to teaching the Christian version of creationism as to how we all came to be. As a result, he was fired and Clarence Darrow represented him. Darrow lost the case. However, a year later, evolution was allowed to be taught. At that time, it was as long as it was also taught with the Christian creationism. So it was still nevertheless a landmark decision. Clarence Darrow said, "Asking how people grew up may make all men equal yet," that we all have many common experiences in growing up. William Butler Yeats said, "Civilization is an exercise in self-restraint." Well, what did he mean by that? Well, if we were all living in a cave, or as the B-52s put it, we're all living in our own private Idaho. B-52s, Rock Lobster, Love Shack, come on, you know them. Anyway, so he also had a song called "We're All Living in Our Own Private Idaho," which I think is pretty hilarious in terms of lyrics and what they're talking about, because boy, are we. Anyway, if you were just living by yourself and there's nobody else on the planet, you could do anything you want. But there are other people on the planet. And so as a result, you have to restrain some of what you might have otherwise done in the interests of other people. So a big debate, as an example right now, is whether or not someone should have to wear a mask. And so the argument could be, in fact, one of the arguments is, yes, you need to wear a mask because you need to protect me from you, because mostly the mask protects me from giving the virus to other people. And so, yes, you have to restrain yourself by putting on the mask, would be the argument, to protect me from getting the virus from you. There are other interpretations. I'm just showing you an example of self-restraint. Or another example would be, if I have a right to life, which is my right to hold, this is all part of the ethics of rights, then you, as the right observer, have to refrain from taking my life, or I can't have the right to life. So you have to exercise some self-restraint in not killing me in order for me to have the right to life. Hence, Yeats said, civilization is an exercise in self-restraint. Socialization is defined as the lifelong social experience by which individuals develop human potential and learn the patterns of their culture. Personality is a person's fairly consistent patterns of acting, feeling, and thinking. Okay, so have you ever actually examined your personality? I got a couple of tidbits on this. First of all, my observation has been that personality is based on your history. And so the so-called personality you have now is based on how you perceived yourself acting under similar circumstances or thought patterns that have developed from the past. Let me give you another example. If you were in the present moment, meaning you're physically here now and you're hanging on my every word, meaning you're not thinking about anything else. If you were always in the present moment, something you would notice is you don't really have a personality anymore. And you go, oh my God, it's freeing. Having a personality can be a real pain in the butt because you have to constantly live up to what you think of yourself or what your expectations are for yourself or what other people's expectations are for you. Like I know, and it's easy enough to understand how people think I'm just freaking hilarious, which of course I am. But many times I will be introduced to people as going, here's Maynard, he's freaking hilarious. And then the other person's going, like, say something funny, Maynard. Going, you know, it's not that simple. You know, I play off of things other people say. So, you know, it's a heck of a burden when you have this rep of being hilarious, even if it's true. But I live with it. I live with it. The burden that it is. Anyway, yes, so personality in your present moment, it doesn't really exist, or you at least have no sense of it. Here's another thing. If sometime you want to spend a few hours and I want you to go inside yourself and go look for the personality, just go look for it. You know what you'll find if you look deep enough? There's no one home. That's right. There's no one home. All right. I'll wait until you've done that investigation for you to go, whoa, he's right. Okay, so once again, we have this on a continuum between nature and nurture. Nature is from the Latin meaning born, and nature is from the Latin meaning nourished. So what is the greatest determinant on our human behaviors? Biological forces or social forces or some combination in between? This debate has been going on for quite some time. As early as the 17th century, English philosopher John Locke used the term tabula rasa, which is Latin meaning clean slate, to describe the human mind at birth, which was written on by experience. So for him, he's way over on the social sciences side. He says that nothing happens until we're born, and then only social experience begins to write the tablets that is our life. Now, actually, I've observed, I mentioned before that I used to teach at Moravian as well. Actually, I was a full-time appointment. My original appointment was a full-time appointment. Half my time was at Moravian and half my time was at Cedar Crest. So I'd be driving back and forth during the day, and I'd have to go to 2 department meetings, 2 dreaded faculty meetings every month. It was a horror show. And finally, they realized, how's this poor schlep ever going to get promoted? And so they finally allowed me to choose one place or the other, and I realized Moravian wasn't going to continue with the social work program, which at that time was an Elvaic project. It was at all 5 of the Elvaic schools, and instead I just located more permanently at Cedar Crest, and here I am. Woo! Okay, what I observed when I was at Moravian, educating a lot of the football players, is a lot of them graduated with that same clean slate most of us began life with. I mean, I got to tell you, I mean, I play football myself, and so I feel like it's okay to make fun of football players. Anyway, some of them were just lunkheads. They were just dumb as hell. And it was graduation day. It was like, hey, man, I'm going to graduate. I'm educated. Yeah, that's right, big fella. Now you go down there and sit with your family. You know, I see selling insurance in your future, perhaps working for a rental car agency. Now, I know that's a horrible stereotype, but go check it out. See how many people in the insurance industry have big necks, or in the rental car agency, big necks, former football players. Just saying, check it out. Well, since Locke's time, as is described in the text, there have been theories by social scientists trying to prove that biology plays the larger role in human development. Today, we understand there is some genetic component to human development, and genetic engineering technology may eventually evidence an even greater role for biological potential. But nature is far more important in determining human behavior. In fact, now we understand that it used to be the belief was that genes just turn themselves on and off. So if you were born with a genetic predisposition for, say, colon cancer, you're going to get it because you got that gene. But then later on came epigenetics, and we realized that something turns the genes on and off, and that's environmental factors. So while one may have a genetic predisposition, the gene, that can create colon cancer, that doesn't mean that person's going to get it if that person has a good diet and is unaffected by other environmental factors that could exacerbate having colon cancer. Now, what I want you to do right now is practice your astonished response. Don't worry, I won't watch. Just practice your astonished response, like, oh my God, OMG, Maynard. Practice your astonished response, okay? Because I'll cue you when it's time to be astonished. And the reason why I do that is because in the past, when I would read this little vignette here, people didn't seem to react in the way that I had hoped for. So I figured, fine, I'll just manufacture it. So you ready? You got your astonished response ready to rock? Okay, here we go. Listen to this. Because family members who share more genes have IQ scores that are more highly correlated, intelligence would seem to have a genetic component. Make sense? Hey, IQ scores, genes, they're highly correlated. Intelligence would seem to have a genetic component. Yet, the correlation of IQ scores for unrelated individuals reared together is twice as high as that of identical twins reared apart. Ah! What did you just say, Maynard? The correlation of IQ scores for unrelated individuals reared together is twice as high as that of identical twins reared apart. So in other words, identical twins reared apart had higher correlation of IQ scores because of socialization, not because of genetics. So the effects of nature and nurture are real, therefore, but nurture appears to be the most important of the two in determining what we call intelligence. So for example, I came across a study one time that claimed that playing chess improves your IQ like 7 to 9 points, something like that. On the other hand, if you watch reality TV or The Masked Singer, it drops by about 20 points. If you watch C-SPAN, you'll become a complete idiot. To get that joke, Google C-SPAN. Walter Lippmann, talking about IQ tests, which were appearing in the early 1920s, said, "I hate the impudence of a claim that in 50 minutes you can judge a human being's predetermined fitness in life. I hate the sense of superiority that it creates and the sense of inferiority it imposes." Well, as it turns out, so-called intelligent tests do not measure cognitive ability as much as they measure cognitive performance. Genetics does play a part in children's intelligence, but most conclude, depending on the researcher, that it's in the 25 to 40% range of genetics playing a role. To give you another example, average IQ scores in the United States have risen throughout the 20th century as a result of more people in the United States receiving formal education. So the more we receive formal education, the more IQ scores go up. Therefore, it doesn't measure ability, it measures performance. Okay, now, I think I alluded to her before. One of my personal Bibles is Parade Magazine, only because I can read what Marilyn Vos Savant has to say, who has one of the highest IQs in the world. So I figured I'm always interested in her take on things. Now, getting back to genetic predispositions, the argument used to be that if somebody is struggling with alcoholism, that the reason is because it's learned behavior. You know, perhaps the mother or the father struggled with alcohol or the grandfather did, and so it's learned behavior, it's just passed on down. Then came genetics, and the argument was no, 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 no. See, what's happening instead is that some people have a genetic predisposition towards substance abuse, whether it be alcohol or some other substances. So the question to the brainiac, Marilyn Vos Savant, was, why do you doubt the idea that certain people are genetically prone to alcoholism? And she said, one reason is that alcohol doesn't exist in nature. Instead, alcohol is a creation of mankind. Our genes don't know about it. Another reason is about 80% of alcoholics are male. No shock there. Yet no one suggests that problem genes are sex-linked, such as male pattern baldness. So I am concerned that in an effort to remove the stigma of alcoholism from individuals and to blame their genes instead, we are stigmatizing whole families and ethnic groups. In my opinion, that's far worse. Okay, so an example would be people referring sometimes with the stereotype and the epithet that Irish are all a bunch of drunks. You know, well, that's an example of saying, well, you see, it's just a cultural thing, it's a genetic thing. And here's good news. I know that many of you, if you aren't already, hope to become parents, and you're going to be worried about, oh my gosh, should I drink in front of the kid? Will that be setting a bad example? And so research has found if you've ever been stuck on the horns of that dilemma, you have company. A lot of people believe, most people believe, that allowing a child a sip of alcoholic drink would likely deter him from further drinking because either the taste would discourage it or because alcohol's cachet would decline when it comes with a parent's permission. Okay, so that's one way of looking at it. But they found that more often than not, the reason why young people drink is, I know this is shocking, it's because their friends are drinking too. They didn't learn it from their parents, they learned it from their peers. Case closed. Okay, let's look at some of the theorists. Let's start with Sigmund Freud, who was kicking about on the planet between 1856 and 1939. So if on this side it's the social sciences, Freud is way over on this side. The biological sciences is saying that's what is largely responsible for determining human behavior. Like many of his contemporaries in Europe, Freud saw biology as creating very general human needs and playing a great role in personality development, but he also allowed for strong cultural forces in this development. Nevertheless, one of his most famous quotes is, "Anatomy is destiny." He said, "My life has been aimed at one goal only, to infer to guess how the mental apparatus is constructed and what forces interplay and counteract it." Okay, hey, you want to learn more about Freud? Take Psych 100. We don't have time for him now. We're moving on. But I'll give you one more quote that evidences his strong belief in the biological factors. He said, "The principal task of civilization is to defend us against nature." Moving on, Jean Piaget, who was kicking about on the planet between 1896 and 1980, he studied human cognition, how people think and make sense of the world. He said, this is a quote by Piaget, he said, "If we examine the intellectual development of the individual, we shall find that the human spirit goes through a certain number of stages, each different from the other." Okay, so while Freud's work was shaped by life in turn of the century Vienna and studying many of his own patients, Piaget had a much smaller sample. He just studied his 3 kids. Well, we know from survey research, for example, if you hand out 100 surveys and you only get 3 back, what can you reasonably conclude from that? Nothing. Nevertheless, and you could also say, hey, he's studying his own three kids. How objective is that? It'll be really subjective. It's his own three children. You know, like my kid does this, my kid does that. You know, whenever you get together another parent, let's talk about our kids. Anyway, if only when the kids get together, they talk about our parents. Well, anyway, nevertheless, his theory, even though he only studied his own three kids, hold up well in looking at different sexes. Does it hold up true for male and female? It does. And does it hold true in cross-cultural analysis? It does. And so his theories are widely taught and accepted, especially in the educational arena. And I know in social work too, we cover Piaget's theories. So he identified 4 stages of cognitive development, right? Four, just want to see, make sure I had 4 fingers. 4 stages of cognitive development in children. These stages reflect biological maturation, which reflects his early training as a biologist. In other words, when you reach a certain age, that's when you get to the next stage. So while he's not as far over on the left side of biological forces as is Freud, he's the next step over. These stages, he said, indicate not just what we know, but how we make sense of the world. So first is the sensory motor stage, which is the first 2 years of life. Here, the world is experienced only through the senses in terms of sensory contact. So, baby gets wet, baby cries, baby's hungry, baby cries. Baby wants to poop, baby cries. Baby wants to be picked up, baby cries, baby cries, baby cries, baby cries all the time. Parents get frustrated, parents start hitting baby, parents get called by children and youth, baby's taken away from parents, and that. I'm sorry, that was kind of an extreme example. Next, preoperational stage, 2 to 7 years of age. Language and other symbols are first used. For example, here's where kids first prefer nickels to dimes because they're bigger. You know, when my kid was younger, being familiar with Piaget's stages, thought, man, this sucker, he's like 2, 3 years old. So what I would tell everybody when we'd host the big birthday bashes at our house was I'd say to everybody, okay, here's what I want you to do. Don't bring the kid any gifts as such. Why don't you just bring dimes, rolls of dimes. He loves rolls of dimes. Bring him rolls of dimes. Okay, so they did. Well, once the party was over, I'd say to Ty, now look at Ty, you got these puny little dimes. I'll give you a pack of nickels. You know, instead, you can have these bigger nickels. Man, I toot for one the kid every time he had a birthday party. What a sucker. Later on in this stage, kids learn the 2 most dreaded words to a parent, which are trust fund. If you didn't get that joke, Google trust fund. See, sometimes I know people don't get the jokes, and I pause because I'm thinking, why? I'm thinking, maybe you don't understand the joke. It couldn't be because the joke's not funny. I've already eliminated that as a possibility. Next is the concrete operational stage, which appears from 7 to 11 years old. Here, there's the use of logic to understand objects or events, but not in abstract terms. So a child may understand, for example, that there's poverty, but not understand abstractly what might be the reasons for that. Jean-Jacques Rousseau said, childhood is the sleep of reason. If you've been observing politics these days, you will also see that it too is the sleep of reason. Then we get to the formal operational stage, which appears around 12 years of age. Here, highly abstract thought appears, as well as the ability to imagine alternatives to reality. Yes, when you're around 12, 13, you're thinking, a couple of years, I'm going to be able to get a driver's permit, and I imagine I'm going to get a new car. Oh, but you'll find out you're going to get that old junker, and if there's going to be a new car, it ain't going to you, it's going to the parents. A lot of people have asked me, Maynard, why don't you give us some quotes from the Bible? Okay, This is from St. Paul, 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 11. When I was a child, I spoke like a child, I thought like a child, I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I gave up my childish ways. Or so you would think, but it's noted in your text that as many as 30% of US 30-year-olds appear not to reach the formal operational stage at all. Yeah, we all know the type. Frat boys, still living at home, smoking pot down in the basement, playing video games, parents yelling, when are you gonna do something with your life? Shut up, Mom, we're busy. Okay, hey, time for a discussion question. So you can think about this one. Are you ready? Piaget's greatest contribution is that through a maturational process, children do learn to shape their own social world. What is the value to a parent, a teacher, a psychologist, or a social worker in understanding and recognizing Piaget's stages of development? Okay, so think about that. Time's up. Okay, what do you got? Okay, well, there's at least two possibilities students always come up with. One is by understanding the stages, you can test whether or not your kid is quote, quote, normal, within the normal ranges. You know, I never think of that. I can never remember the name of this, but when a kid's born within 24 hours, they do a reflex test on it, test normality. Yeah. So the idea being, you know, these stages help you to tell the truth. So if your kid's 18 and he still prefers, or she still prefers nickels to dimes, you got to get the kid some help. The other thing it's helpful in is getting and doing tasks or getting toys that are age specific. Now, I didn't realize this. You know, I would go get toys at Toys R Bucks before it collapsed and went bankrupt. And I didn't realize, you know, on the side where it indicated what age it was. So here's my kid Tyler, and he's like 3 years old. I'm trying to play chess with him. I'm like, man, this kid is dumb as shit. Because I go, no, Tyler. That's not how the pawn moves. That's how the knight moves. No, that's how the rook moves. And he'd get more and more frustrated. He'd go, Daddy, I don't understand this game. I don't want to play anymore. I think, man, is this kid dumb? Who knew? He wasn't ready to play chess yet. Hey, it's on the job training being a parent. Okay, well, let's move on, shall we? For the exam on page 121, you need to know about George Herbert Mead's theory of the social self. He was kicking about on the planet between 1863 and 1931, and we're going to jump all the way to the right side, social sciences side, that it's social determinants that determine human behavior. So while Piaget's stages of development are linked to biological maturation, Mead's are not. Mead said, the self has a development. It is not initially there at birth, but arises in the process of social experience. Shakespeare said, men at some point are masters of their fates. The fault, dear Brutus, is not in the stars, but in ourselves. Mead's theories, and he was a symbolic interaction paradigm. Mead's theories revolved around the self, a dimension of personality composed of an individual's self-awareness and self-image, that the self is not biological, but emerges from social experience and interaction. While psychologist John Watson introduced behaviorism, kind of over here on the scale, here's Mead, here's behaviorism, Mead said it was more than just behaviors that shaped the self, calling his theory social behaviorism. As the story of the isolated child Anna and the others at the beginning of this chapter show, social interaction is absolutely necessary for the self to develop. Mead said, we learn by modeling adult behavior and learn complex patterns of behavior. Okay, so we do a model adult behavior. I'm sure many of you, when you were kids, played mommy and daddy. I personally got caught up in some other game called Doctor and Nurse. I played that game so often, my biggest concern when I was growing up was that I was somehow going to become a male slut. But hey, I was young, I didn't know. It's time to disrobe once again, nurse. I have to do my medical checkup. Well, we just had the disrobing and the medical checkup. There's so many lawsuits out there right now. I have to be sure. Well, anyway, so through this process of modeling ourselves after mommy and daddy and other adults, we learn to take the role of the other. We imagine that situation from that person's point of view. Now, this doesn't happen all at once. It's estimated that there are as many as 24 lines of human development, maybe as many as 200, depending on the theorists you talk to, if you talk to them at all. So for example, you have a cognition line, an intelligence line, a relationship line, a kinesiology line, and on and on. And the idea isn't to be all tens. The idea is to be high in those areas that are consistent with what you want to be with your life or what you want to do for a living or whatever. So for example, one could be high in cognition, but low in relationships. So anyway, now when you look at human development, all of human development, what's interesting about all these lines of human development is they're all stages. And you can't get through first stage until you get to the second. You can't go through the second stage until you go through the first stage, because the second stage is based upon and then enlarges upon the first stage. So think of it as going to school. When you go, you can't go from first grade to third grade. You go from first grade to second grade, and first and second grade takes into consideration what you learned in first grade and then expands upon it. Then when you go to third grade, it takes into consideration what you learned in first and second grade and expands on it further. So it's all stages. So everybody goes through the same stages, whether it's Mother Teresa or Hitler, we all go through the same stages. So initially, in our initial stage, we think of everybody as an extension of ourselves when we're little babies. We don't see separation. Then as we get a little older and mature a little bit more, we begin to see separation, that people are separate from us. They're not just an extension of ourselves. Although some people never stop seeing others as an extension of themselves, and they're called narcissists. Anyway, so in the next stage, you begin to realize not only are people separate from us, but they have their own feelings separate from us. Then as you get further advanced in that stage, you begin to realize the things you say and do can affect those other people's feelings, that you begin to imagine the world from that other person's position. To this, his colleague, Mead's colleague, Charles Horton Cooley, added the concept of what he called the looking glass self. Looking glass is just an old term for a mirror, suggesting that the self is based on how others respond to us. So we use an increasingly sophisticated system of interactive feedback with others and self-reflection to develop the self as we grow up. From the Poet's Corner, I have this from Charles Horton Cooley. Each to each a looking glass reflects the other that doth pass. Okay, so we use this feedback system to develop ourselves. And so I know this is pretty shocking, but I can't tell you how many times people listen to my shtick and say, you know, Maynard, between the two of us and the rest of the world, you really act like an asshole. And I go, whoa, man. I go home that night and I have to reflect on that, man, acting like an asshole. That doesn't sound good. And I think about it and I ponder it and I reflect on it and I go, nah, just go back to the same old shtick the next day. But I did reflect on it. Another example of this, sometimes young children are hurt by adults who seem not to appreciate their primitive homemade gifts they bring to the parents, such as artwork from school. This feeling reflects children's limited capacity to take the role of the other. They cannot comprehend that the adult does not see the same value in the art gift as they do. Now, I'm a big Simpsons fan, and I'll freely admit it was much better in the old days than it is now. But there's a Simpsons episode for all occasions. And I remember a Simpsons episode to prove this very point, where Homer and Marge were arguing about Bart. They were in their bed, they're arguing about Bart, and they don't realize Bart's outside, listening outside the door. And Homer's saying things like, I'm sick of that kid Bart. What's he ever done for me? And Marge goes, oh, homie, don't you remember? He brought you that artwork from school. And he said, that piece of crap, I threw it out. And Bart's outside the door. See, Homer didn't appreciate the value of the gift in the same way the kid did. Because, anyway, it's probably too sad. Peekaboo. Peekaboo games also demonstrate kids' inability to take the role of the other. They assume since they can't see you, you can't see them. Hey, peekaboo's a great way to terrorize a little kid. Daddy, Daddy, where are you? I'm not here anymore. Blah, fend for yourself. You know, and then after we play peekaboo, I say to Ty, now listen, because I realized early on the biggest challenge for a parent is, and the most important thing for a parent is to accelerate the kid's independence. So I would make them just stand in the closet for hours at a time, figuring, hey, I'll learn independence that way. Who knew it was misguided? But you know, thank God for therapy, because after a few years of therapy, he seems to be pretty fine now. He seems to be okay. Mead further differentiated the other into significant others and generalized others. Generalized others are widespread cultural norms and values we use as a reference in evaluating ourselves, whereas significant others are our family and friends. So it's one thing when somebody off the street or taking a class with me, which is pretty much the same, says to me, Maynard, you do act like an asshole. Yeah. But what if my family, my dear friends, both of them, what if they say to me, Maynard, it's true, you really do act like an asshole. Man, then I really do have to reflect and think about, man, the people who are closest to me are trying to help me, and they're telling me act like an asshole. Next day I just go back to the same old shtick. That's crap. So Mead argues that the stages of life are defined and structured not by going through certain ages, but by society, and they're not rigidly linked to age. The self emerges over time due simply to more and more social experience. So for Mead, the keys to development of the self are the thoughtful self-reflection, imagination, and imitation that takes place through the symbolic interaction of social experience. Now, here's a tip. Boy, if you get this question wrong, I don't know what to tell you. On page 122, you will see it's called Building on Social Experience, Sequencing and Development of Self as a Process of Growing Social Experience, of Gaining Social Experience. So they have the way, the sequence in which this process works. In case, and there is, a question on the exam that says, which is the proper sequence? See, all you do is memorize this one, page 122. You get that one wrong, I got no hope for you. Blaise Pascal, the French philosopher and mathematician, said, thought makes the whole dignity of man. Okay, time once again, folks, for some thoughtful reflection on a discussion question. Are you ready? Mead emphasizes the need to take the role of the other, as he believed in people's ability to reform society. In social work, we emphasize the need to develop a non-judgmental attitude in working with clients. The question before you is, how is a non-judgmental attitude and taking the role of the other connected? Think about that for a while I wait. Okay, the waiting's over. Here's the connection. First of all, what does taking the role of the other mean? Okay, let me give you an example. I think this is to me an interesting example, because I used to use it as a typical example in social work classes, and actually came across a social worker where this actually happened. So the example was, hey, what if you're a social worker and the first week you're out there as a professional and somebody confesses that he or she axe murdered their mother? Well, I actually met a social worker that happened to. Okay, so this person's going on, and I'm just curious, okay, so why did you think you had to axe murder your mother? Well, that person goes on and explains the logic of why that person thought he or she had to do it. Well, I can certainly understand the logic of why he or she thought they had to. Yeah, I get why you thought that was necessary. Now, have you ever noticed when you say to people after they tell you whatever, and you go, I understand, they think that means you agree. No, 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 no. I don't agree you should have axe murdered your mother. I simply understand the logic, your internal logic of why you thought that was necessary to axe murder your mother. So where does the non-judgmental attitude come in? Well, non-judgmental attitude would mean I'm not judging you as a human being, but I am certainly going to judge what you did. And necessarily so, you need to be removed from society for axe murdering your mother, despite the reasons. That's going to be up to the courts to decide whether or not it was legitimate and what the punishment should be. So it could be your mother beat the hell out of you all your life and persecuted you and psychologically abused you. And so maybe the courts would say, look, you can't go around killing your mother, but we're going to give you a lesser sentence given the circumstances or whatever. So how does a non-judgmental attitude, and why is it important for us in general? Because if you think about it, most of us spend a great deal of our time judging other people. And we judge just the most petty things like, well, I can't believe what she's doing with her life. Well, get this. You don't even know what you're supposed to be doing with your own life, and you have the audacity to judge somebody else's life. How the heck do you know what path they have to walk down? You just don't know. And so it's that old Christian admonition, judge the sin and not the sinner. And so to me, all people are good people. They just sometimes do horrible things. So getting back to judgmental, think about it. I mean, we judge the clothes they wear. I can't believe she's wearing those shoes. Like, yeah, well, she is. On and on and on and on. All this gossip. And it's gossip is what it is. Judging, 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 judging. It's just pointless. It's needless. And think about this. Here's an insight for you. Everything you judge another person by are the same standards you hold yourself by. So you're simply projecting on them your standards for yourself. So that'll give you some insight into it. Now, judgment is one thing, observation is another. It is necessary to make observations. And so, again, the difference is if I observe you saying, I want to get all A's in college, and you never study, unless you have a photographic memory or something, that's impossible. So my observation is you'll never get all A's if that's your practice, okay? It's not a judgment. A judgment would be, you're a fool, you're an idiot for not studying. Now I've judged your action, you know, instead of simply making an observation about, see, if that's what you want to do, the observation is that's not going to get you to what you want to do or where you want to go. And so we in social work always start where the client is. What do you want to do with your life? Okay. Unless it's breaking laws or whatever, I will help you to facilitate that process. The great mystic, Jiddu Krishnamurti, said, to observe without evaluating is the highest form of intelligence. So first of all, take some time to notice perhaps how often you cast judgments on other people and how they conduct their lives and what they're wearing and all these trivial things and how pointless it is. And then once you realize you have the habit, you can realize how pointless it all is and stop doing it. Okay, in terms of taking the role of the other, won't this be fun? Imagine what it's like to teach a college class. For example, how do you think it feels to be in front of the class teaching? How do you think it feels? All powerful? Indeed. Why else would I do it? No, that's not why I do it at all. How else might it feel? Rewarding? Only when you laugh at my jokes, which is incredibly difficult when you're doing this in front of a computer screen instead of a live audience. Actually, I take that back. When I tell the same jokes in front of a live audience of students, I don't get much of a reaction on the jokes anyway. So a very small difference. How else is it? But yes, it is rewarding. You know, I have said, I am on record as saying, why do I teach? For the simple sole reason I'm trying to turn you on to yourself. That's it. And I take it back. I'm also trying to promote social change. But yeah, most importantly, I'm trying to turn you on to yourself, which is also what sociology tries to do. Let's see. How's it feel? What else might I feel? What am I looking for in you? Let's shift the focus. Sometimes students say a response in class. I'll take any form of animation. If it's just slop running down your lips, I'll take it. You know, at least it shows you're out there. Some people say, are you looking for us to learn? Sure. I would love for you to learn. And I would hope to be an instrument through which you can learn. But you know, that's up to you. I can lay it all out there for you. You still got to do the learning. You still got to take the initiative. You still got to focus on what I'm saying and try to learn. Because, you know, this is the old axiom. Once again, I'll say it. I get paid whether you learn or not. The difference between here and high school is in high school, the teachers have more responsibility for your learning. Not in college. You have the responsibility for your learning and you're paying for it. And so the idea is I have created a course and I have created assignments in these presentations through which I know you can learn a heck of a lot about sociology, but it's entirely up to you. Now, it is true that we faculty members are equipped with the ability to tell when somebody's learned, because I can see that magic moment in class where a light bulb goes off over your head, goes on. And it's kind of interesting because it used to be an incandescent bulb, then it became a fluorescent bulb, now it's an LED bulb. Another question could be, what am I looking for in myself? Geez, I don't know, to make it through the day. Okay, let's move on, shall we? We're on to agents of socialization in modern societies, which begins on page 123. What are they? First and foremost is the family. For most people, the family is the most important agent of socialization. And I have a touching quote here from Robert Frost. He said, home is the place that if you go there, they have to take you in. That's true, I found, unless you're drunk. Now, are you ready, folks, for another one of Maynard's amazing anecdotes? Because ready or not, here it comes. You know, in class, when I say that, there's like some hesitation other than a few of my early fans, and they'll just go, oh, yeah, bring it on, Maynard. Everybody else is kind of. And I have to threaten them. And I say, listen, either we tell the anecdote or I keep lecturing. Go, whoa, Maynard, you don't have to threaten us. Go, you know, cool, just tell us the anecdote. Well, let me go back to my formative years. I remember I was 16 years old, and a friend of mine, this is all under the heading of they don't have to take you home if you're drunk. A friend of mine got a brand new car for his 16th birthday. I didn't have a car. And he says to me one day in school, he says, hey, Maynard, tomorrow night after school, you want to go up to my uncle's place? We'll break in and drink beer, his beer. I go, nothing about that sounded good except take all the other words out, drink beer. Now, up until then, the only time I had had beer in any kind of meaningful way was my dad would show off with his brothers, my uncles at picnics, and he'd go, hey, Maynard, why don't you have some beer too? As they're all pounding beers. Here, Maynard, and I'd taste them and go, what swill. Little did I know. Okay, so the day comes, and this is the after school thing. You know, it's like that 3 to 5 in the afternoon hour when I used to play doctor and nurse. All kinds of things happen because school's out and the parents aren't home yet, you know? Anyway, so there we are. It's like 3:15. We drive up from the high school up to his uncle's place. And breaking in the window consisted of lifting the window open, which is always open. So we go in and we're sitting down and we're drinking for this little history of beer, Rolling Rock, which used to be brewed in Latrobe, PA, with actual spring water, used to have little 7-ounce pony bottles. And that's what his uncle had. So we're pounding these 7 ounce. But, now it's made, Rolling Rock's made in Newark with whatever constitutes spring water in Newark. But anyway, so we're pounding these bottles of these 7 ounce pony bottles. I'm thinking, man, I like beer. Woo, I think I found my purpose in life. Well, anyway, his uncle comes in. I'm thinking, oh man, here we go. And his uncle comes in and sees us and he says, are you guys sitting here drinking my beer? And his nephew goes, yeah, we are. And he goes, you guys are hilarious. That's funny. Bring me a beer too. I'm thinking, man, this guy's cool. So that launched me into drinking beer every weekend. So I still didn't have a car. And another one of my friends had a brand new Mustang Mach 1. And so he would pick me up at the house, at my parents' house, and we go out drinking. Now, just to show you how things have changed, what we do is we go to the local bar and we just go, we weren't 21, we weren't even 18. We just go in a local bar and we get 2 6-packs. Now, how do we were able to do this? Because we knew the owner of the bar and he knew us and he knew everybody in the bar and he knew there were no liquor control board agents in it. So he'd look around and he'd go, yes, you can have 2 6-packs. Cool. So then we go back out to the car and come back in because the state law was you couldn't take out more than 2 6-packs at a time. And we didn't have to come in with a disguise or anything. We just come right back in and say, can we have 2 6-packs, please? Yes, you can. Then we'd have a case of beer and we just drive around and listen to music and laugh our asses off and pound beers. Okay, so the routine would be they drop me off, and okay, now here was the key, because sometimes I was, shall we say, more inebriated than others. And nevertheless, I had to get into the house and not let my parents know that I was drinking. Why? Well, for one, my mother's father suffered from alcoholism. So as a result, the last thing she wanted to see was her kids drinking beer and suffering that same fate as he. And so, they dropped me off in the sidewalk and I'd have to negotiate about, I don't know, a 20-yard, 10-yard sidewalk. And it'd take me about 30 minutes, but I'd get there. It'd be like 1 step forward, 2 backward, 3 to the side, And I get to the doorway. And as soon as I opened the door, like a magical process would take place. I would be temporarily totally sober. So I open the door, walk in, and sitting right there to my left were my parents watching television. And right before me was the staircase to go upstairs and go to my bedroom. And I would stop and pleasantly say to my parents, hello, mother. Hello, father. I see you're enjoying TV tonight. I hope you have a wonderful evening. I'm going to bed now. Sleep well. Then I'd make it up the steps. And as soon as I got up to the top of the steps, I'd be drunk again. I'd be stumbling all over and banging off the walls. And those times when if you haven't, you may someday find out, where the whole room's spinning around and you have to put one, and you're laying in the bed and you have to put 1 foot on the floor to try to get some stability. And, I'm worshiping at the porcelain altar all night. The next morning I'm going to say, well, you're in the bathroom a lot last night. What was going on with that? And I go, hey, I don't know if you've seen the latest evidence on cranberry juice, but it's really wonderful for filtering out the urinary tract. That's what I've been doing. So it's all very explainable. Well, this is going on for years. And finally, one night, I don't know, I think we switched from Rolling Rock to Budweiser. And I got really messed up in the Budweiser. And so as a result, it was time to drop me off as usual. At least it was time I thought they should drop me off. But my friends were going, dude, you're too drunk. You can't pull this off again. Your parents are going to know it. You're going to get in big trouble. So don't do it. So it was so bad that they didn't even drop me off and let me stumble up the sidewalk myself. They were going to accompany me, which, like, you don't think that would be obvious to my parents? Something's up. But anyway, the whole way, in the 30 minutes it took me to walk those 10 yards, they're trying to dissuade me from going in. Don't go in, blah, blah, blah. Here's the reasons why, blah. Wait a while, wait till you're more sober, blah, 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 blah. And I, of course, argued with impeccable reasons, saying things like, that's a predator. Okay, so the magic moment comes, and I get to the doorway, and they're standing outside the door, and I open the doorway. Hello, mother. Hello, father. Enjoying TV tonight? I hope you have a wonderful evening. I'm going to bed now. Well, I get about 2/3 of the way up the steps and I come stumbling down head over heels, bang. And my friends who are still standing in the doorway go, ah. Meanwhile, my parents rush over and my mother's going, my God, he's drunk, and starts pounding away at me. And I'm going, trying to fend off her shots. Meanwhile, my dad's standing there kind of proud going, oh, he's drunk, all right. And my friends say, Mr. Cressman, we don't know what happened. We don't know what happened. Yeah, like it's the immaculate drunk. One moment he was sober and all of a sudden he's drunk. We can't possibly account for it. And my dad says to him, yeah, right, boys. Okay, go home now. Well, it turns out that I really did drink too much. And my father decided that, and probably necessarily so, that he'd have to be on a death watch for me all night long because he was concerned that I was going to die the old fashioned way by drowning on my own vomit. Well, it was one heck of a night. And I woke up the next morning with a headache and sick. It was biblical proportions. And, you know, as a result of this experience and what I put my parents through, I was sadder but wiser. And I realized, you know, they probably knew all along I was drinking because my mother and father knew all the signs. My dad drank. My mother certainly recognized those signs. They knew all along. They were just in denial because they didn't want to have to admit I was being drunk every night. And so I decided, you know, this is not fair to my parents. I have to go into a different direction. So from then on, I decided I would smoke pot. So what would happen is, yeah, my friends would still pick me up. Instead of getting a six pack, we'd be smoking joints, listening to music. It was even better because each note was happening by itself. Whoa, whoa. Listening to the music was like, whoa. You know, if you think about it, rock and roll was written by people who are stoned and performed by people who are stoned for people who are stoned. So it all made sense that we're listening to rock and roll and going, whoa, whoa. Well, it'd be time to drop me off. And this time, no problem going up the sidewalk. I wasn't even touching the ground. I was like, and I get to the door and I go, hello, Mom. Hello, Dad. Watching TV tonight? I hope you have a wonderful evening. I'm going to bed now. And my mother would say, what's the matter with your eyes? Why are you squinting like that? I'm sensitive to the light. It's midnight. I know. That's the end of the story. Again, please hold your applause and instead put money in the donation jar next to your computer. Bills only. Well, the significance of the family is shown in the fact that 4 of the 5 most powerful social readjustment experiences involve family members. They include death of spouse, divorce, marital separation, jail term, and death of close family member. Another study found that for most children of divorce was the most important cause of enduring pain and anomie in their lives, A-N-O-M-I-E. It's a term developed by Durkheim, meaning no rules, no guidelines in society. That's the bad news. The good news is, hey, there's therapists out there who specifically focus on kids who are experiencing the divorce of their parents. Okay, let's see. We got the second agent of socialization is the school. Schooling emerged only with the declining economic value of children, most specifically on the farm. If you look at the Amish school calendar, the Amish have school only at those periods of the season when they're not needed for harvesting or planting. And need I tell you this, school is from the Greek schola, meaning leisure employed in learning. That's why these are the best days of your life. What do you have to work all the time? Boy, it's awesome. 3, the peer group, a social group whose members have interests, social position, and age in common. And it's an escape from adult supervision, as I found, as we all find. By the way, the word peer is from the Latin par, meaning equal. Now, you might have heard the term par in reference to golf, shooting par or not. It just means equal. Isn't that just fascinating, riveting? Quentin Crisp said, the young always have the same problem, how to rebel and conform at the same time. So they defy their parents and copy one another. Well, that's kind of true because going back to the 60s, because our parents allegedly in the 50s my dad would wear a coat and tie and a suit. He didn't, but the theory is, you watch Leave It to Beaver, Ozzie and Harriet, you would think that's the case. And mom was always wearing that pretty dress, even when she was doing housework and all that. And so, okay, so what are we going to do? Dad, we all had short hair. Dad had short hair. Screw that. We'll have long hair and we'll wear ripped jeans and we'll have tie-dye shirts. But as the 60s go on, it became like a fashion statement. And so everybody started copying each other. Even today, sometimes when I'm in class, I think, oh my gosh, I really feel bad for these students. I see they all have ripped jeans on. Then I realize it's fashion. Okay, fourth agent of socialization, the mass media. The mass media is the means for delivering impersonal communication directed to a vast audience. We're going to talk about this in much more detail. There's an entire chapter devoted to it. And so we will talk about it when we get to that chapter. I will say this. There are some 250,000 TV sets produced each day, roughly equal to the number of people added to the Earth's population. So think about that. 250,000 more people appear on the Earth every day, and we're producing that many televisions. Now, this is important because if it weren't for television, we'd have to think for ourselves, and we don't want to have to go there. So as soon as you're popping out of the womb, they got a TV for you. So baby's born, wah, TV, born, wah, 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 wah. Here's your TV. Watch this. Wah, watch TV. Here's your TV. See, because TV tells us everything. TV tells us who we should hang out with, how we should dress, what we should eat, where we should eat, everything. All to save us the horror of thinking for ourselves. Thank you, TV, oh great Cyclops. Okay. What else do we have here? Okay, next we will discuss socialization and the life course. A useful psychology course to take in connection with the life course is lifespan development. But I got a couple of quotes for you here. General George S. Patton, World War II hero said, if everyone is thinking alike, then someone isn't thinking. Americans' trust in the news media is at a historic low. 32% of Americans say they have a great deal or fair amount of trust in the media. Among Republicans, 14% express trust in the media, while 57% of Democrats express trust in the media. 72% of Trump voters say the entire Russia story is fake news. Okay, now get this. You may recall Donald Trump Jr., when pressured, admitted that he actually did meet with the Russians in Trump Tower. Now, how much collusion was taking place to have them help him by interfering in the election, only time will tell, but he did meet with them. Now, even though Trump Jr. admitted to the meeting, only 45% of Trump voters believe the meeting with the Russians to get damaging information on Hillary Clinton actually took place. He admitted it. And yet almost half of Trump voters say, nah, it never happened. Hannah Arendt said, a people that no longer can believe anything cannot make up its mind. It is deprived not only of its capacity to act, but also of its capacity to think and to judge. Okay, I got a quote here for you about the life course from Ted Turner. Who was Ted Turner? Famous people, famous rich people. Ted Turner. How about Turner Broadcasting System, Turner Network Television, TNT, TBS? Is that owned by Ted Turner? Bingo, that is correct. He said, life is like a B movie. You don't want to leave in the middle, but you also don't want to see it again. Interesting commentary on life. Now, friends, we're getting to a part in the course where this is going to be of particular value to you women, so please pay careful attention. This is a quote from the late actress Sophie Tucker. She said, "From birth to age 18, a girl needs good parents. From 18 to 35, she needs good looks. From 35 to 55, she needs a good personality. From 55 on, she needs cash." Now, I say, why wait until you're 55 to realize what you really needed all along was cash? Go right to that immediately. So what I would like you to do is please go to page, I believe it's 25, if I'm reading my own notes correctly, in your text, and go look at the picture there. I'll wait. Okay, waiting's over. What did you find? Did you see a picture of Hugh Hefner with a young woman? I believe the old term for that was he's a sugar daddy. But see, folks, that's heterosexist. In our society, we now refer to that as a sugar sig other. So if the whole idea is to get cash, how does a woman get cash sooner than later? It's simple. You marry rich. Now, I'm not saying for a moment that you should, how can I put this? Abandon all your morals and so forth. Just, you got a college degree from Cedar Crest, a venerated, wonderful institution, and that's going to help you go far. But it's always good to have a plan B, and the plan B is marry rich. Now, I'm going to explain how to do this for you, no extra charge. Tongue firmly planted in cheek in case I get emails about this going, I can't believe you said it to us. We're just having some fun here, maybe. I give you Anna Nicole Smith. Anna Nicole Smith, you may recall, some years ago, married a Texas oil billionaire who was in his 90s. Now, it was one of those May to December weddings. She married him in May, and by December, he was dead. Nevertheless, he said, direct quote from him, he said, "These were the greatest 6 months of my life," apparently alluding to the fact that she did her bit, if you get my drift. Nevertheless, when he died, the family fought her tooth and claw because he left her, as his lawfully wedded wife, half of everything, because after all, these were the 6 greatest months of his life. So here's another tidbit for you. It's always important, because you never know when somebody's going to offer you marriage. I think it's always important to carry a jeweler's glass with you. And I think the other important thing is, don't settle for diamonds. Diamonds are as common as carbon. And I know there are super expensive diamonds, but this whole thing about getting diamonds for marriage and engagement, and how they sell it at Love Day, which is also known as Valentine's Day, this is a big scam perpetrated by the diamond cartel. Don't go by me, go read about it. The De Beers diamond cartel started a long time ago, 50, 60, 70 years ago, to sell you on the idea that diamonds are a girl's best friend, that unless you get a diamond, that sig other really doesn't love you enough. Why settle for diamonds when you can have stones that are much more precious, like emeralds and sapphires and rubies? Nevertheless, it's always good to have a jeweler's glass with you, because if the person says to you, "Will you marry me?" and throws a ring at you, you take the ring, you say, "Just a moment," and take your jeweler's glass out, check it out, and go, "Oh yeah, let's do this." Now, let me point out that my understanding is that you can have many engagements and still keep the ring without ever getting married. I'm just saying. Maybe the best way to explain this whole how to marry rich thing is, I had said this in class, again, tongue in cheek, so I don't get cards and letters on this and emails and complaints. Anyway, 2 of my beloved social work seniors stopped by my office. And it's about 11:45, and we're talking. The whole time we're talking, they're looking at their watch or cell phone, seeing what time it is. And I go, Well, how rude. Are you here to talk to me, or are you here to see what time it is? And they go, hey, Maynard, nothing personal, but we got to scoot because we got to go to lunch. And I go, oh, well, something special being served here at the chateau, known as the Falcon's Nest. And they go, no, 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 no. We're going up to the hospital for lunch. I go, the hospital? Why do you go there? And they said, we go there about 3 times a week, hoping we can meet doctors. And I went, whoa, somebody's been listening. I thought, all right, I'm going to test them. Please tell me more. Why do you do this? Why a doctor? And they said, well, it's pretty simple. If you think about it, most doctors are working 60, 70, 80 hours a week. So you don't see them all the time, which is a good thing. See, here's something you probably haven't realized yet. Initially, when you get into a romantic relationship, oh my God, you can never be apart. But in time, you realize you need a little space between the two of you. And so you get plenty of space when you marry a doctor. And I said, okay, that's cool. So what are you two going to be doing in the meantime while they're working? I said, we're going to be at the country club, drinking foo-foo drinks, playing tennis, swimming in the pool. What else? And going, oh, yeah, that's really good. I said, tell me more. And they said, see, we'll be trophy wives. And then the way this works is, these people, these guys work hard, or women, again, we're talking sig other here, they work hard. And so when they party big time, and they go on vacations, they go on very luxurious vacations. And because they have money, they're invited to charity functions. So we get to wear all these great gowns and stuff and outfits, just to be trophy wives. I go, no, go on these vacations. Okay. And I said, wait a minute. I said, what if in the process, your prospective sig other thinks that you're a gold digger? Then what? And they immediately responded with, you think that's what this relationship is about? You think it's about money? Let's just call the whole thing off. No, 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 baby. No, 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 we don't need a prenup. This isn't about money. This is about love. So it's cool. It's cool. It's cool. God damn, you two are good. And I said, well, what happens if you get divorced? They said, big deal. We get half of everything. So there you have it, folks. I laid it all out for you. Use that as you wish. The late actress Zsa Zsa Gabor said, a girl must marry for love and keep on marrying until she finds it. Next stage is childhood. Samuel Johnson said, one cannot love lumps of flesh, and little infants are nothing more. Oh, how touching. W.C. Fields. W.C. Fields was a comedian in the 30s and 40s, and he produced these little comedy vignettes that were like, 30, 40 minutes long, little movies. And a running gag, meaning repeating gag in all of his movies, was how he hated children. And so you'd always see kids taking advantage of it and how upset he'd get. So when asked how he likes children, W.C. Fields replied, well done. Adolescence. The connection with adolescence is to the peer group influence. In other words, when you're an adolescent, man, your parents are idiots, and the only people who make any sense to you whatsoever are your peers. For me, this is a time I'm just happy to have survived. Mark Twain said, when I was a boy of 14, my father was so ignorant I could hardly stand to have the old man around. When I got to be 21, I was astonished by how much he had learned in just 7 years. Spiro Agnew, who was he? He was a vice president, United States. He was Nixon's vice president. And he too was a crook. He had to leave office eventually because he was found guilty of, when he was the governor of Maryland, of absconding certain funds. They were both crooks. But listen to this brilliant observation he made. He said, youth, to some extent, lacks experience. That was the origin of the counter expression, well, duh. Adulthood. Adult is from the Latin adultus, meaning grown or preoccupied with work. You know, it reminds me of my father and I in our difficult interchanges when I was a hippie. Um, One day he's sitting there reading the newspaper, rather conservative. I, of course, was the radical hippie. And I'm dancing around him doing my Peter Pan dance, like, I'll never grow up, I'll never grow up, ah, ha, 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 ha. And I say to him, dripping with sarcasm, I say, so when am I going to become an adult like you? And he doesn't even flinch. He just says, wait till you have kids. I went, hmm. And as he turns the page, he goes on to say, but don't bother. They'll only grow up to disappoint you. Old age and dying. We're going to return to this in much more detail when we get to the topic of aging in society. But let me give you a quote from Queen Elizabeth I regarding death. She said, on her deathbed, all my possessions for a moment of time. Too late, Queenie. See, you can't wait till then to realize, man, I should have paid more attention to life when it's happening. Think about us. Most of the time, our minds are not in the present, they're always in the future, as in things will get better in the future. Things will get better when Maynard shuts his yap and ends this session. Things will get better when I end this semester. Things will get better when I graduate from college. They're always going to get better. So what happens is life is what happens when you're always thinking about the future. Then finally in your last days, you're going, man, I should have paid more attention to it. This was a beautiful life. Too late. Seize the moment, friends. Regarding death, here's an 18th century New England epitaph. Beware ye as ye pass by, as ye be now, so once was I. As I be now, so must ye be, prepare for death and follow me. Yogi Berra said, always go to other people's funerals, otherwise they won't come to yours. And I kind of get what he was going for there. Okay, now something I will throw out to you, and again, I'm just giving you my opinion, you don't have to agree at all, and heaven knows it's a philosophical debate, but I believe we have been given the gift of total free will, and there's many reasons why I believe that, and it's consistent with what not all, but most of the mystics and gurus and sages argue too, that we have total free will, the gift we have been given from the Creator. Now, you would have to agree just logically that if you have free will, if you have total free will, there can't be exceptions to it, because if there's an exception to it, then you don't have total free will. Does that just seem logical? Okay, so again, just understand the premise. If you have total free will, you can't have sometimes free will, sometimes not. So there can be no exceptions. So the Roman philosopher Seneca said, just as I choose a ship to sail in or a house to live in, so I choose a death for my passage from life. So the argument is this: your death is not an accident. The mystics argue over and over again, there are no accidents in the universe. Everything is purposeful. Therefore, there is no such thing as an accidental death. No one dies before the moment they choose, in the manner in which they choose to die, and at the time at which their mission in this particular lifetime is complete. It's no accident. You have free choice. Now, people who have gone along with me with free will say, I was with you up until now, Maynard, but I'm out of here on that one. Well, if you believe in free will, then why should that be the exception? And what would you do? You find it more comforting that you just die accidentally, you have no choice in the matter, and that it just happened. Damn, I wanted to keep living, but no, I had no choice in the matter. Don't you think it's more comforting to adhere to a philosophy that you actually do have a choice? And you may say, well, why would I choose to die in a violent death? I don't know. I don't presume to know. And it would be arrogant of me to somehow know why somebody else made the choices somebody made in his or her life. It's enough to try to understand your own life path and follow it, or my own life path in my case. And so I don't know, perhaps you wanted that last rush, knowing nothing happens to you anyway. It only happens to your body. that you are not your body, so it doesn't matter what happens to you. Um, you know, some people say, what about a baby? Why would a baby choose to die? Well, you think of a baby in its biological package, but it's a full-blown soul in a baby body. And so I don't know. I don't know what the purposes might be. Maybe entering into this life, you got together with the people who are going to be your parents in this lifetime and said, okay, here's the deal. I'm going to die as a baby because for you guys, you want to experience that shock and force you to rethink what you believe. I don't know. I'm just speculating. Why would all these people die in the 9/11? Why would they all choose to die? And why would they all choose to die in the Holocaust? I don't know. Perhaps as a collective act of love that we would learn from. Okay, so I'm going to read the quote to you once again. Seneca said, just as I choose a ship to sail in or a house to live in, so I choose a death for my passage from life. Okay, I'm going to end this chapter with a few quotes under the heading of socialization and human freedom. Now remember, a key point of sociology is for you to become free of the socialization process that has so governed your individual thinking that you aren't making decisions that perhaps are in your best interest, but because you've been programmed to make those decisions. Here's an anonymous quote: humility is the final achievement. The rate I'm going, I don't know if I'll ever achieve that one. Joseph Campbell said, are you going to let the system eat you up and rob you of your humanity? Or are you going to use the system to human purposes? The anthropologist Margaret Mead said, do not make the mistake of thinking that a small group of concerned people cannot change the world. It's the only thing that ever has. Winston Churchill, ever hear of him? World War II, Prime Minister, England, wore a top hat, smoked cigars, party animal, folks. He said, kites fly highest against the wind. The poet John Greenleaf Whittier said, for all sad words of tongue or pen, the saddest are these, it might have been. Yeah, some people consider the worst is a missed opportunity. See, because things present themselves to you in life, not accidentally, they provide an opportunity for you. But you know, as they said in Star Wars, if you miss the opportunity, don't worry, another one will present itself to you because you didn't take advantage of the opportunity the first time, and you presented that opportunity to yourself because there's something you needed to learn from that experience. And I'll give you a final quote from the Beatles. Ever hear of them? Boy band, 1960s, the Mop Tops. The Beatles said, and in the end, the love you take is equal to the love that you make. That's all for today, kids. Keep those cards and letters coming, and I'll see you soon with the Chapter 6 presentation. Bye.